So did you have a story for me? I have so many stories that I could share with you about about this past week. If you don't have a story for me,
every week you prompt this with, "Do you have a story?" Because I have so many stories. Every week you prompt it like this, where I'm like, even if I did have a story, it reminds me of like a little kid being like,
"Do you have a story?" Because I have a better one.
Yeah, it reminds me of a little kid being like, "Do you have games on your phone? Because I want them. I want them."
Do you have a Tamagotchi? Because I have 5.
Yeah, right? So I will...
Whoa, 2 of them just died again. Why did I get all these Tamagotchis?
I can't keep up.
I'm learning no lessons about child rearing. Wasn't that the point of this?
I think so. You can tell a story. I'll give you the storytelling this week.
Do you remember those kids who had like 5 Tamagotchis and like every day was a tragedy in their life when we were growing up?
I remember,
you're on the playground, they're like crying. They're like, "My Tamagotchi died again." It's like, well, you should have been feeding it. Like, they're like, "I don't know the feeding schedule for all 5 of them. It's all different." It's like, well, you maybe shouldn't have that many children. Like,
spreadsheets don't exist yet. Sorry.
Not when you're 8. Like when you're 8, you just want the little dancing cool thing, like 8-bit thing on your 8-bit, 16-bit. I don't even know what it was. It was bits. There were less than 20 bits on the screen of life, simulated life. And,
good times.
There's always some kid like, I don't know, Jordan or Michelle that just couldn't keep their Tamagotchis alive. And so like, I forget who it was, but I remember in one of my classes the Tamagotchi got taken away from the kid during school because because it would die every day. So and then like the teacher was and the kid obviously didn't get why it was being taken away. So they were crying, saying that it was going to die, but that was no different than any other day for this Tamagotchi.
I remember a kid had to go home because they forgot their Tamagotchi and they were like, "It's gonna die," and they called their parents to come get them.
My favorite thing about the Tamagotchis is like they would poop too much and that's how they would die. They would literally die in their own fecal matter. Like that was like their own toxicity killed them. Yet we loved them as pets. And then there were all the brands that came out. They were trying to make them fight. Remember, they had like the fighting, like raise your own
Pokemon.
fighter.
Yeah,
like, yeah, it was like but. This was before Pokemon. This was like before Pokemon. There were little.
Pokemon was early 90s. The game.
No, dude, I'm telling you, look it up. There was definitely Tamagotchis before Pokemon.
Okay.
Tamagotchis were like the original. And you know how I know this? Because they weren't on Game Boy.
Hang on.
Look it up.
Okay, November 23rd, 1996. All right, so now we're gonna look up when did
Pokemon.
Oh, I can't spell. Hold on.
Pokemon's 98.
February 27th, 1996. Told you Pokemon came out first.
Whoa! But in Japan, not in the U.S. When did it come out in the U.S.?
Tamagotchi came out in Japan in November of 1996, so it's still before.
Hold on. When did Tamagotchi come out in the U.S.? Hit me with it.
Okay, I'm still right.
When did Pokemon and Tamagotchi come out?
Okay, so Tamagotchi came out on May 1st, 1997 in the U.S.
And Pokemon?
August of 1998. Boom! Told you.
No, Tamagotchi's first.
Oh.
97 to 98.
Oh yeah, that's a good
Buddy.
point. But Pokemon still came out first in general. In general.
You're trying to gaslight me into remembering a different America that existed. Odie's gaslighting me first thing on the podcast. He's like, Pokemon was here before Tamagotchi. I remember, Odie. Which happened?
I can't hear you over the theme music.
It's the intro now.
Welcome back to another episode of the Gaslight Podcast.
We'll see what kind of a reality we're believing in the next 40 minutes.
It's okay. Digimon came out before all of these. Digimon came out in 86.
Did it? Did it?
No. Yeah, I mean, yes. Oh. Yes, it did.
Really?
More gaslighting.
I don't know shit about Digimon.
More gaslighting.
You could tell me anything about Digimon, and not only will I, like, 1, believe it, but 2, I won't remember the fact that you gave me either, because it's just like, there's no space in my brain for Digimon.
Do you remember Zoids?
I remember, like, Pokemon was out, and then Digimon came out, right? And then, like people were trying to compare the two, and I remember watching Digimon, and like the first like evolution happened for each, and I was like, oh, okay, cool, that's kind of like Pokemon. Yeah, it seems pretty cool. And then like the first evolution was, remember, like the little dinosaur one, he got like bigger, right? But then like the second evolution, he turned into like a human.
Yeah, they morphed really weird.
They turn into like humans. Like
yeah, it was really bizarre.
And I remember like I was like, wait. My brain was just like, no, this evolution doesn't make sense, guys. You fucked up the evolution. I can't do it. Like, I'm out.
Do you remember Zoids at all?
No.
That's the one. Zoids? For some reason, I remember I had a VHS copy of 3 episodes that I recorded myself of the TV show Zoids, and that's all I remember of those 3 episodes.
Weird.
Isn't it weird how your brain remembers random shit?
Oh, yeah, big time.
Yeah. Should we clap?
Brains remember weird shit all the time. Yeah, let's clap. All right, ready? 3, 2, 1. Oh, yeah. On time, every time. Welcome back to another episode of the UnPop podcast. I am your host and Capitan, Kevin Miner, todo siempre, he, him. With me, as always,
is Odie Matthews, the chef, cooking up that wonderful gaslighting content, they, them. I got a gas stove today, Kevin.
Yeah, you do, and you left it on, and then we're just going to light it at the end.
Absolutely.
Explosive ending to the podcast.
I hope you like explosive
I love this
steak.
Analogy we're crafting. There's so much happening here. There's so many elements that we can just run with. This is great. Well, to craft another analogy, Odie, I'm going to hand you the figurative ship's wheel on this figurative ship because I am the captain. You know what's funny? I tried to look up ship's wheel because I was like, what do they call the wheel on a ship?
Like a pirate
So I looked
ship?
it up. No, they just call it ship's wheel. That's it. It's called a ship's wheel.
Like on every boat or on just
on
like
every the one that steers the rudder, the one that's moving and directing the ship. Yeah, it's called a ship's wheel.
On like
nothing
every
special.
Boat?
No, I thought it was like I looked it up. That's the nautical term for it. I was like, all right, sweet. I thought there was going to be a cool term. I was going to learn something new. Yeah. And I would come in with some lingo I could throw your way. No, just ship's wheel. Like they were like, that's port, that's starboard, that's the mast, that's the aft, that's the fore, that's the ship's wheel. This, they're just like everything else gets these nice terms. That's the ship's wheel. Like you're just like, all right, cool,
Captain,
I guess.
They don't have tires.
Yeah, well, they don't. No, but they do have a wheel, and you can spin it.
But I guess I just would have thought
you could call it the captain's wheel if you wanted to. I mean, I guess. But
I guess I just would have thought that, like, on, like, pirate ships, like, a pirate ship compared to, like, a
would think.
Like, compared to, like, a big yacht, compared to, like, a small fishing boat with an automatic, motor that, like, we would have called it different things for the size of the boat.
You would think it... You would even think it would be called the helm's wheel because that's where it is on the boat, right? It's on the helm. It's a wheel. Maybe even the helm's wheel. That even sounds more official than ship's wheel, right? But whatever. Somebody just gave, like, every once in a while, people just give up on terms. You know how I feel about this. Like, in America, we have grapefruit. I think grapefruit is the dumbest word in the world. I will never, like that. You want to talk about a pointless hill to die on? I'm up there like sword and shield ready for a shower of arrows. I'm just like, it's pamplemousse. It's pamplemousse, everybody. Pompelmo. What? Pomelo. What? They have a grapefruit in every other language is like pamplemousse.
Grapefruit.
Right?
It's grapefruit.
Pompello. Right? It has all of these beautiful words, and then you get over here and it's grapefruit. Right?
Yeah.
Or like an aubergine. Or an aubergine. An aubergine? What a beautiful term.
Is that an instrument?
What an interesting and unique term. No, you know what it is over in America? Eggplant.
Oh, I thought aubergine was an instrument in the symphony.
No, it's
oboe. I'm thinking of an oboe. Never mind.
You're trying to gaslight me again, Odie.
No.
All right, before you gaslight me further, I am handing you the ship's wheel. You are the Capitan because we are going over...
What?
You gotta announce the topic now. You're the captain. Grab the wheel, Odie. Grab the wheel.
I don't know how. I got my cooking utensils.
Odie's standing there with a ladle. Odie, grab the wheel.
We are talking about a topic that I was talking to you about earlier in the week. We have been in, and I mean, we've been in since probably 2010, a renaissance resurgence of nostalgia bait in the shape form of remakes, reboots, requels, sequels, prequels, like just any property that you loved. We're gonna just beat it into the fucking ground until you don't love it anymore. And I think a really good example,
franchisable properties.
And it's funny because, like,
first off, I love that you said Renaissance because that means re-enlightenment, and I don't feel like remakes actually are re-enlightenment of culture.
Now, don't get me wrong. There are some good ones out there. There are.
Okay.
But I would say when you start to really realize how much stuff in the last 14 years is based off of something that's already existed, it's a little upsetting to see the lack of originality, if you will. And, like, I want to say this first because I feel like you know this franchise. Did you ever play the Halo games?
Of course.
Okay, so this isn't a remake, requel, sequel, but I just want to talk about
Halo.
The Halo TV
Combat
series.
Combat Evolved.
Have you heard anything about the TV show?
No. I'm not paying attention to it.
So
if I had heard good things, then I would say yes, but I haven't heard shit about it, so I haven't even paid attention.
It's amazing that it got a season 2. I watched the first 3 episodes of the first season whenever it came out. And look, this doesn't fall into our topic today, but I want to also point out that even when a property like Halo or even to an extent, like, I know there was a Super Mario Brothers movie in the late 90s and, like, there's been Sonic cartoons, but, like, a property that everyone's been like, I want a Halo movie. I want a Halo TV show. We want a Super Mario Brothers movie. We want a Sonic movie, which I just watched Sonic 2 last night. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie. It's a fun movie.
Yeah.
Sonic 2 is a fun movie. Yeah, I like it.
Okay, keep going.
But my point is that, like, the Halo TV show, I read an article last night that basically Master Chief has sex. He takes his helmet off all the time. He's mean to Cortana. Cortana is just sassy. There's no real, like, plot from the books, the novels, the games, none of that. It is very much like just a weird little thing that they created that just seems to have the Halo name attached to it.
Yeah, they really dropped the ball. I mean, honestly, dude, like, did you read any of the Halo books?
I read the first one.
Okay. They could have because the first one is technically the first game, but it's not the same, right? Like, it's not like the level progression that the first game takes, but ultimately they could have just done season 1 being book 1.
Yeah.
That would have been the perfect introduction to the universe. It would have covered so much. It would have left enough mystery for people who are coming into the franchise who don't know a ton about the Forerunners and the Flood and all that stuff, right? Like, it would have left a lot there, but instead, whatever they've made, I haven't even heard shit about because, like, nobody who likes Halo is going, this was good, Like, if anybody who, and I didn't even love Halo. Like, Halo was fun, but it's not. I wasn't one of those kids who was like Halo every week all the time, like the sword and the God pistol. Like, no, that wasn't me. So, like, yeah, no, I get what you're saying, and I think part of why I laughed at Renaissance is a lot of these remakes are actually retakes, right? So, like, the first question that I had written down on my notes was, why are we in an age of remakes / retakes? And really, I think what it comes down to is it's replication, right? So replication being a basic function of, I don't want to say, like, just corporate America, but the corporate extension of intellectual property, right? So the business side of intellectual property that wants to make money off of it. And not only that, maximize the profit that it makes. That's what that does, right? Yeah. And all of these franchises, Halo, Paramount Plus, right? MCU, Disney, right? Like, all of these things, they're tied into a corporate project, a corporate venture, there's a corporate leg of it that wants to make money off of it, maximize the profits made off of it. And one of the best ways to do that is to recreate the things that people loved the most about it, right? And so I think that's the number one reason. Of course, there's many reasons, but I think that's the number one reason we're in an age of remakes and retakes, right? And the second reason being, CGI finally got to a point that we could reimagine things in a much more like CGI and the collective suspension of disbelief publicly have met at a crossroads, or rather met at a crossroads somewhere in the early to mid 2000s, right? So like 2000s into 2010s, like where that crossroads finally hit, we were like, oh, cool. Like we can make anything now. Like this is all possible.
I'm glad you mentioned CGI because
hit me.
I mean, it's funny because in a good movie, in a movie that has time to go through the proper pre and post production process, the CGI, great example.
Amazing.
Dune, visually stunning. The Creator, visually stunning. The Batman movie, visually stunning. Then you get movies like, I wasn't going to bring this up, but now I'm going to.
Bring it up.
There was a movie filmed in, I believe, like 2019, 2020, starring Jackie Chan and John Cena, directed by the guy who directed the fourth Expendables. This movie is called Hidden Strike, and it's on Netflix. And if you want a movie that basically drops you in the middle of something that I still don't know what that movie was about. I literally, like, it opens with, like, John Cena asking for money from his brother, and then they're doing, like, a heist of, like, Jackie Chan has, like, 12, like, Greyhound buses that are armored, and they're driving on a thing called, like, the Highway of Death in some no-name Middle Eastern country, and, like, John Cena's group is trying to kidnap a doctor, and then he's like, then he gets, like, somebody kills his team, and then he has to work with Jackie Chan, and the doctor's not really it makes no sense, right? But where I'm going at with this
is it a Netflix original movie?
I believe so.
Yeah, that checks. Okay.
So where I'm going with this is the whole movie looks like it was filmed on green screen, and not not Hollywood green screen, right? I'm talking like 2012, 2013 skit comedy on YouTube green screen.
Well, it probably was.
Yeah. So,
first off, Hidden Strike sounds like a technique that a guy who's charging $15 an hour for martial arts classes is going to teach you, right?
Do you want to guess what Jackie Chan's character's name was?
Once you get to your purple belt, I'm going to teach you the Hidden Strike.
You take a guess on what Jackie Chan's character's name was.
Strike.
Dragon.
That's so dumb.
And you want to know what John Cena's character's name was?
Crocodile.
Chris.
Oh, I was close.
Chris and Dragon. But anyways,
that's crazy.
You know, like with Halo, where I was my whole point with that
We're back to Halo. Yes,
was just to kind of put a bow on what I was thinking about it. Is
Wrap it up.
I purposely waited. I watched the first couple episodes of the first season. There was one action scene. It incorporated like the first person shooter aspect that we saw in like the Doom movie from way back when.
Was it on the beach?
I was in, it doesn't matter. I don't remember. But
dumb.
I remember waiting, and I remember when the season wrapped up, I looked into it. I was like, okay, is this worth it? And there was like one other fight scene in the entire 8 episodes besides the one in the opening. And so when it got renewed for season 2, I realized that when it comes to remakes and reboots and stuff, as long as there is even just an ounce of support for it, which apparently there was for the Halo show, although I will be shocked if it gets another.
Yeah, of course there was. People love Halo.
But I mean, even with all the negative reviews, I was shocked that it got a season 2. I don't think it'll get a season 3, but because of that, I kind of looked into, which leads into our topic, you know, how many properties that are pre-existing, whether they've had movies or, you know, TV shows in the past, are we about to get flooded with? And
how many?
A lot.
Okay.
Well,
I mean, we already got Indiana Jones again.
And there's another Indiana Jones movie coming out.
Again.
I mean, I'm sorry, not movie, game.
Great.
So I brought up a list of all of them. Sorry, I'm getting to the right page here. I brought up a list, but this page is full of gigantic ads that cover the entire screen.
Hooray, we love that.
Okay, so real quick, I'm gonna give me.
Where's this list from?
It's Forbes.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna name all of these as fast as I possibly can. So here we go.
Yeah.
This is the entire year movies that are based on prior things. We have Mean Girls, Madam Web, Winnie the Pooh, Dune Part 2, Kung Fu Panda 4, Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, The First Omen, Godzilla x Kong, Furiosa, Mad Max Saga, Garfield Movie, Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, Bad Boys 4, Inside Out 2, A Quiet Place Day 1, Despicable Me 4, Twisters 2, Deadpool 3, Speak No Evil, Alien Romulus, Kraven the Hunter, Beetlejuice 2, Transformers 1, Saw 11, Joker 2, Smile 2, Terrifier 3, Venom 3, The Amateur, Gladiator 2, Wicked Part 1, Karate Kid, Lord of the Rings, Mufasa the Lion King, and Sonic the Hedgehog 3.
Okay. Well, okay. Hold up. Some of those are actually just sequels in a universe that's being made for the first time.
Yeah, I'm just saying that as a whole, though, that's a lot.
It's all, yes. So you and I have talked about this, and I think we've talked about this on here before. Somewhere around 2022, 2023, there was a big shift on the corporate side where there were all these meetings, and basically the big streaming corporations all came out and they were like, all right, we've, and I'm sure numbers were presented and crunched, but they were like, we're going to invest in franchise properties more than original ideas.
Yep.
Like, it was just publicly declared. And when that happened, that's when you started seeing the production for all of these extra things. Now, like, getting into it a little more, of those, like, The First Omen, yes, that's a remake, right? Like,
yes.
That's a proper
It's a
remake,
prequel
right?
to The First Omen, actually.
Well, it's a prequel, but it's also a remake. Let's be real. They're calling it a prequel, but really, what are they doing? They're doing all the stuff that you do in every Omen film, but they're starting it back further than when we know it to get up to, right?
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
like, ultimately, in my mind, that's also a remake. We got Ninja Turtles last year, right? We got a live-action adaptation of The Little Mermaid. We're getting a ton of live-action Disney, right? Because Disney's going back through their catalog, and really, like, I can see the mindset. I can see the function, the thought process that's going into making the Disney live actions. They're like, all right, we have this huge catalog of largely beloved animated films. We have all the capability in the world. We own them. Like, they own that property, right? So it's not like they have to pay anybody to do anything extra with it. So they're going back through and they're doing them as live action, and they're seeing which ones hit, right? Yeah. And then the ones that hit, I can almost guarantee you they're going to get a sequel, or they're going to get a prequel or a spinoff, right? And that's because the investment into that franchise and developing that outward does mean going back into it. Now, Dune was originally filmed and produced in 1984. Yeah. Then it got a sci-fi series. It actually had 2 sci-fi series. I actually loved those. I don't like the original Dune movie that much. It's okay. Like,
isn't that the one with Professor X, Patrick Stewart?
Yes.
Yeah.
That one, not that great. I was never crazy about it. But then the series on the Sci-Fi Channel was amazing. I remember loving that as a kid. And then we get into Denis Villeneuve. He does the new Dune movie. Now, Dune 2, sequel to Dune, right? It's Dune Part 2. It's really Part 2 of book. What... Because the book is gigantic, right? So he did the right thing, right?
Yeah.
And although the Lord of the Rings, like, they did 1 movie for each book, they very easily could have done 2 movies for each book, right? Like, it could have been done that way. They're all that big. And it's the same thing with, like, Dune. Like, the movie needs to be broken up because of how much is in that. Like, if they tried to cover everything like the Dune 1984 movie did, it would just kind of get garbled. You'd lose a lot.
And I will say,
we don't have the time. We don't have the attention span.
I agree. And I will say, like, out of all those ones I named, there are some on that list that I'm like, I agree with you. Like, I'm looking forward to. And I don't want this to become a, wow, look at all these sequels and stuff that no original ideas, because where this is all leading to.
Well, there aren't a lot of original ideas, but keep going.
Right. I mean, there are and there aren't. Like, I obviously on this endeavor of watching, every big release this year, which I finally got around to Argyle. Spoilers. Here's my review of Argyle.
Yeah.
Shit.
Oh, okay.
That's
not a spoiler.
I thought
you can just leave it at that.
Yeah, I thought the cast would make up for it, but damn, that's disappointing.
That's a bummer.
But it's okay because I get to go watch Madam Web this week. Yay!
Okay, have fun.
I won't. Anyways, but
I didn't even know that movie was coming out, and like I mean that in the best of all possible ways. Like it's a Sony / Marvel one.
It's
right?
a Spum movie. Sony Pictures of Marvel movies.
Is it only Sony? Does Marvel have nothing to do with it other than like having the original property?
I don't think Marvel has anything to do with the
well
Spum
then
movies.
it's gonna suck.
Yeah, of course. Right. So, but where this is all. Sorry, where I was going with that before Argyle is there are original ideas that are coming out this year, and there are some really good ones. Whether they're I understand that there's a lot of movies that come from older novels and books, and if they've never had their chance at a big screen adaptation, I get it. And obviously, I'll sit here and say like Percy Jackson, a book series that I love, had an attempt at movies that were pretty bad, and I'm happy that it got its treatment in the form of a Disney Plus show. I'm happy it got renewed for a season 2. So I don't want this to become a like, wow, Odie just hates non-original stuff. That's not it. I'm just saying that, and that's where we're going with this.
We're in an era of remakes.
And what sparked all of this was Avatar: The Last Airbender. So I wanted to kind of use that as my example because
Before you touch on that, I just want to I want to dig a little bit deeper into the human condition and part of what drives the retelling of stories, because this is the first time in human history that we're going through remakes of what I would call culturally inconsequential properties, right? So like what I mean by that is like we've been retelling stories forever, right? The Iliad, the Odyssey, mythology. Mythology gets retold over and over and over and over and over again. And it's even being told in modern stories, right? So you have this original source material. You've got like the Ring of Gilgamesh, right? That arguably the first horror story, arguably where vampires and zombies come from. It's the first epic poem on written record from Sumeria, right? Then you have the Iliad, the Odyssey. You have classic Greek mythology, you have classic Norse mythology, you have all the different mythologies of other cultures. I would even say Christian theology / mythology gets retold time and time and time again. And even the Quran, like there's a lot of mythology from the Quran. There's a lot of like tropes and themes and things that keep coming back through human history. And what that is that's us. We have a tradition of being storytellers. That's how we convey some of the deepest and most meaningful things that happen, right? But now, and why I say culturally inconsequential, that's not to say that they're 100% culturally inconsequential, but not in the same way that someone retells an ancient myth or a story that helped to influence culture over hundreds of years before the invention of the TV and, the homogenization of so many things. We have corporations, right? We have companies and we have production companies. We have like all of these different things that are putting out these stories, these myths, these these different they are cultural pieces, but like in a very different way. They're for profit, right? So it's not the same as sitting around and hearing the story that helped shape the way our people are. It's Captain America discovering that Hydra still exists in the U.S. and then having to fight them, right? Like it's very different, but it still has a lot of the same elements of the classic hero's journey. The hero of the thousand faces. We could get into the Carl Jung aspect of this, but I think just to brush over it, we are storytellers. We are always retelling stories. We are always reshaping them, reskinning them. We're telling them in ways that are effective and meaningful for our people, for the people around us, right? This has just always been happening. It's just now, not only can we tell them faster, we can reach a larger audience via production, reproduction, replication, things like that. We can and streaming, like you can reach an audience instantly, right? And then not only that, someone can take that idea, be influenced by it, write something that's influenced by that idea, and then reskin it for themselves, and then tell that version of the story, right? So like, it just keeps happening over and over again. And to cite one of our examples before you get into Avatar: The Last Airbender, the majority of the time you and I were watching Rebel Moon, we were like, we just know what this is from. You hit the nail on the head. Like you're just doing Seven Samurai / The Magnificent whatever / like it was just it was all of those movies, all of those stories, and Zack Snyder just wrapped them all up into a little ball and threw it at Netflix for $500 million or whatever. And just was like, here, enjoy this regurgitated mess, which is what it ends up feeling like if you don't So the question of originality and the question of, is this a remake? Is this a retake? Is this a retelling? Is this something that's putting a different spin on it? The question of that is what ends up having a relatively large thumb on the scale of whether or not a remake or a retake is good. All right, go ahead with the Avatar part. Sorry.
No, you're good. I'm glad you
just wanted to make sure I touched on that because that's a big piece of
no, and I totally agree, and I'm glad you said that because it also, just going back to my point as well, which ties into yours, is I'm not saying that just because something is an original, it shouldn't be made. It doesn't deserve to get made. It shouldn't get a treatment because, again, there are so many things that I love that are based, the original source material is, whether it had a movie adaptation before that didn't do well, or it's based off of a book or a show. I mean, there's a Fallout TV show coming out this year that I'm super excited for,
Me too.
And I'm not saying that obviously unoriginal, but when you take a property that is beloved and has a huge fan base and you try to adapt it, remake it, retell it, or whatever, but you kind of either, in my opinion, do one of a couple things. You either do it because it's a cash grab, which we have seen, I mean, we all know they're out there. You do it because you say you're a big fan of the source material, but then your adaptation isn't either, and I don't want to say faithful because I'm not, we've seen people and creators kind of deviate from the original source material and still make something that is really solid and also kind of more of a love letter to that material. Or, you just kind of miss the point and you butcher everything. And the reason I bring up Avatar: The Last Airbender is because, for one, the cartoon is incredible. And I firmly believe that is one of the shows that, yes, it came out when I was like the right age for it. And it only was 3 seasons and it was about kids and all of that. I still believe that even upon rewatching it as an adult, like, it is still a show that is really, really solid. And the reason why is because it tackled things that, especially at the time for a kid's show, really weren't handled the way that this show handled. I'm not going to sit here and say other shows weren't trying to like have these elements and these themes and these character arcs, but the way that Avatar: The Last Airbender did it, and for those of you who don't know, I'm just going to kind of speed run some of the things. One of the characters, Sokka, very sexist, very misogynistic, and constantly underestimating women. His whole character arc is that he's constantly getting one up and beaten by women to where he learns, oh, like, hey, I shouldn't be this way. I should respect them because, he had this old school ideology that the man is the warrior, the man's the defender, and yet he's constantly getting his ass whooped by women. He's, that's his character arc. The flip side, his sister Katara, her whole character arc is that she is constantly underestimated and outperforming everybody because she's a woman. Everybody just writes her off, but she is one of the strongest characters out there. And so forth, and so forth, and so forth, right? Yeah. So then you have in 2010, I believe, was M. Night Shyamalan Ding Dong's adaptation of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which anybody that's a fan of the cartoon would say, holy shit, that's a pile of shit.
I think even people who weren't fans, I think anybody who saw it was like,
what is
the
this?
Best impression they probably came away with was, yeah, it was okay, it was cool.
Yeah, it's fine.
Which is not good.
No, it's
for
not.
A property that's beloved and recognized by its fan base and heralded as one of the better animated series of all time.
Yeah,
like to have the best opinion be it's okay is a fail.
Not good. And my favorite part of that movie is there's the whole point of Avatar: The Last Airbender, which I'm sure everybody knows, is there's the elements. You have wind, earth, fire, water, right? And you can control some people control the elements, and the firebenders have always been able to just shoot fire from their hands, right? That's kind of like their thing. And there's a line in that movie where one of the I think it's Uncle Iroh's character starts bending fire, but he's doing it out of his hands, and everybody in the room's like, "Oh my God, he's bending fire without fire!" Because in that entire movie, M. Night Shyamalan changed it where they could only bend fire if it was around them. They couldn't just make it appear out of their hand. So a lot of them like carried torches and then would use that fire to like. They had to have fire in order to make fire. It was really dumb. Anyways,
that's dumb.
So that brings us to the Netflix adaptation, which I will admit, Netflix sometimes has some hits when it comes to...
Which is not out yet.
It comes out the 22nd of February.
So 2 weeks.
Yeah, so we're getting there. So we've seen on Netflix some really good adaptations. Umbrella Academy, fantastic. I fucking love that show. One Piece, fantastic. Love that show, right?
Okay.
Where the concern for Avatar: The Last Airbender, and this kind of brings us into, this whole point of remakes and reboots and kind of like asking that question, when is it worth it? When the original creators leave because of creative differences, and then it comes out that the actor playing Sokka lied about being Native American in order to get the part. It comes out that they change one of the big plot points in the cartoon is there's a thing called Sozin's Comet, and that is what the Fire Nation is waiting for to get like ultimate power to finish taking over everything, right? That's going to make the Firebenders like 10 times as strong because this comet has this energy, comes every 100 years. So when Sozin's Comet passes through, Fire Lord Ozai is gonna harness the power and take over the world, right? So that's what puts them on their time crunch. They removed that. That's no longer a plot point. And this is the one thing where I was like, okay, that makes sense because they did it so that way, since they have human real boys and girls in this show, they're obviously going to age in between seasons. So removing that, like, it has to be done in a year, like the cartoon, allows them to age without it being weird. Okay. Makes sense.
Okay.
That's a good change, right? I think that's so your characters don't look 20 like Stranger Things when they're still supposed to be 15. Good point. Yes. But then it comes out that, Sokka's not going to be sexist or misogynistic at all. He's actually going to be respectful of women. Okay, well, like, maybe that's because, we live in an age where people don't really want that, even though that's kind of like a big point for his character and, like, kind of his whole character arc.
But he can still be judgmental of other characters.
Right, so...
have we watched it yet?
No. So this is,
I think you're kind of jumping the gun on this one as a remake.
No. I'm not saying this. I'm saying these are the things that have come out about the show, and I'm presenting them as like, okay, so they took that away from him. All right, like we'll see what happens, right? Like I'm not judging this. These are articles that have come out. Then it came out that Katara, her whole thing is that she's kind of the mom. She raised Sokka, she's constantly underestimated. Well, actually, she's not really going to be that mom, and everyone's not going to underestimate her, and she's going to be taken very seriously. Okay, like, that could work. That could still be like, okay, you're changing things about the characters, but that's fine because we've seen changes like this before. But then, and this is the one where I'm like, okay, I'm a little pessimistic now because... One of the main points of Avatar: The Last Airbender is that Aang, he gets frozen. He doesn't want to be the Avatar. He wants to be a kid because he's like 12, and that's like his whole thing. He constantly, in the first season, in one of the first episodes, he goes to Kyoshi Island in order to, I can't remember what the name of the animal is, but he wants to ride this like really big fish because it's something he used to do when he was a kid. He's trying to avoid his responsibilities as the Avatar because he wants to be a kid because he never got to be a kid. Right? They removed all of that. He's not going to be a kid. Yeah. He's going to be straight serious. He's going to be die hard on being the Airbender or the last Avatar. Like, they changed all that. And
did they? I still haven't seen it.
Right.
So I'm like,
this is.
You're reading articles, and here's the thing. Like, before you finish this, these might be gatekeepers. These might be people who are so addicted to the purity of source material, and you and I have talked about this before, that they're ruining an experience that could be, based on what we're talking about, a little more original.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm glad you say that because my final one, and this is why this is also
You're listing all the reasons that this might be bad before we even watch it.
And I'm doing this specifically because I'm leading into
Okay.
So this has been my
Keep going.
These articles, in the order that I read them, this has kind of been my thought process where I'm like, okay, you're changing a couple things, but it could still be good. And then I saw the one about Aang not being a kid, and I'll admit, I was like, oh, I'm a little disappointed. But then the next one that came out was the actor for Zuko, his acting in this show is terrible. And then I was like, okay, hold on. Wait a minute. We've gotten 2 trailers, and he's had no voice lines. We've barely seen him. I'm like, okay, this might be...
But this is like this happens with everything.
Well, that's what I'm going with.
Adaptation or a remake. Okay.
My point is to kind of cap my train of thought on all these articles that I'm mentioning is that's when it hit me, and that's when I realized, oh, like nobody knows anything, and
Yeah.
a lot of this could be real, and I'm gonna watch it, and if it turns out that they did make all these changes, maybe I'll like it, maybe I won't, but. What's funny about this is, and why I bring up Avatar: The Last Airbender and all these, changes from the source material is because while this is happening, Kevin, and for those of you that might know, they are doing a live action How to Train Your Dragon, right? And they've cast it, they've started filming it, and they
as in like the same group or
DreamWorks.
Just people, okay.
Just Hollywood, Hollywood people, and
the
why
industry.
Why I find it funny.
The general industry's doing it.
Why I find it funny that so many people take these articles about Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I saw on TikTok people being like, "This show's going to be so bad," like people saying what we're saying not to do, judging it without seeing it at all. And then the live action How to Train Your Dragon literally posts this big article from the creators, and they're like, oh yeah, like it's not going to be a shot-for-shot remake. Like, it's going to be almost a retelling. And everybody was like, oh, yes, woo, can't wait to see a retelling of How to Train Your Dragon. Like, this is going to be great. So it's like, on one side, you have this thing that's like, hey, we're going to probably do some retelling. And people are like, no, we don't want that. And then another one where people are like, oh, that's cool, I want that. And it just goes to show you that even myself have fallen victim of, oh, this might be bad before even watching it.
Well, I think what you've touched on isn't necessarily like remakes and retakes being faithful or not, because one, they're not out, and two, these are just articles. But you've touched on something that's a little more dangerous in an era where so many things are being retold, right? Which is, and we've talked about this before, gatekeeping, right? These are gatekeepers. These are people who are coming in with an opinion, treating it like a fact, right? Mm-hmm. And you even mentioned that the one kid lied about being Native American. That doesn't affect the storytelling of a show. That sucks separately. Right?
Yeah, that's a
like,
different
that sucks,
issue.
But off to the side. And that's an issue where, like, yeah, cool, issue an apology, like, whatever. I don't know. Like, people lie to get parts all the time. They lie about their height. They lie about their weight. They lie about their age. Like, that shit happens. Mila Kunis wouldn't even exist if she didn't lie.
Yeah, right? Zachary Levi pretended to be Jewish.
Exactly. So, like, that sucks separately.
Which is
so
bad.
That has nothing to do with the validity of a show that's being remade. But ultimately, going back to it, like, getting back to the remake retake thing, there's a documentary called Everything's a Remix. Have you ever seen this?
I've heard of it.
It's by Kirby Ferguson, right? And Kirby Ferguson does a really good job of defining what a remix is. And the statement is everything is a remix. And I think that's correct. I think at a certain point, yes, there were original ideas. Yeah. And I think we've extrapolated them out and added different elements to them. Yes, we have. Great. But are they all relatively the same thing? Yes, because they come from the same source material, the human consciousness. So ultimately, Kirby Ferguson says, a remix it's about, like, whether or not something is a remix is about whether or not you can recognize the chunks of other people's work within it, right? Which is almost everything. But then, defining, like, so the creativity to Kirby Ferguson is based upon three elements: copy, transform, combine. Which to me makes a ton of sense, because even Avatar: The Last Airbender is pulling from Tibetan philosophy. Oh, right? Yeah. It's pulling from, like, old earth and elemental stories that have been told in many different cultures. It's pulling influence. And so what they do is they copy, right? They transform into the story around Aang and his friends, and then they combine all of that to create the proper story. And so now, we're retelling it. Dangerous. It sucks that, dude, really, like, the thing that you really touched on when you're talking about Avatar: The Airbender was something that I really don't like about culture in general. It has nothing to do with remakes or retakes. It's the overproduction of meaningless content just for the sake of having something relevant, right? Mm-hmm. So it's content for the sake of relevancy, not for the sake of value, right? But, like, with these remakes and retakes, everything's a remix anyway. I mean, look at the most popular songs that came out last year. They all had, like, or at least not all of them, but most of them had samples, right? Never Gonna Give You Up, get sampled, right? Yeah. Like, so many songs that came out that were popular last year I'm not going to go search for a list. It would probably be pretty easy to find, but so many samples, and there's so many things that keep coming out. Like, there was a song that came out that sampled Pony by Genuine, and I was like, oh yeah, cool, that's Pony. And people just don't even pick up on, like, and a lot of people, it's their first time hearing that, right? So it doesn't matter to them that it's a remix. I hear it, and so I have a different experience than that person. But like, even this retelling of Avatar, like, there's a kid out there who's going to be 11, and this is going to be their introduction, right? Like, they've never seen it before, you know?
So I'm glad you say that, because one of the things that I have been thinking about or having myself in the mindset of is, I will fully admit there are things that I watch that I am biased about. I don't know if the Percy Jackson show is good or not, really, because for me, it was amazing, because I love Percy Jackson. I know everything about that universe, and everybody did it's exactly how, it's exactly how I pictured it. I love everything about it. So maybe it's not that great. Maybe people's criticisms are valid, but for me, I loved it, right? So I think about Avatar: The Last Airbender, and I've seen some One Piece fans be like, hey, like, I didn't like that show, but I'm glad that people do, because now that'll get more people interested in One Piece. And I've heard that from people that are like, I only read the manga, I've only watched the anime, and then like people that have done both. Everybody's like, most of the fandom is like, I'm glad that people are getting an introduction. So with Avatar: The Last Airbender, with How to Train Your Dragon, with the First Omen, even if you want to some extent, I believe that if it's somebody's first introduction to it, even if it's bad, it might channel...
Get them interested.
Yeah, it might channel more interest and more views to the original show, which, and, not to still use Avatar as an example, but, like, I will say this: if you're somebody that's a huge fan of The Last Airbender TV show, or the cartoon, and you might watch this show, and maybe it's bad, maybe it's not for you, the good news is they are doing with the original creators, a sequel with Aang and everything, cartoon to the original show. So it's like, maybe this show isn't going to be good. Maybe it'll be great. Who knows? But that's not all there is. There's other things to this property. And I guess my point is that, like, I have fallen into, in the past, of being like, oh, this remake, this reboot isn't necessary. Oh, it's garbage. And, like, yeah, I stand by, a lot of them are pretty shitty and shouldn't have been made, or, like, just are bad. But maybe to some people they're good, or maybe to some people watching Alien Covenant was what got them into the original Alien franchise, which is great. And so you get to, like, number 4.
I still haven't seen that, but
yeah, no doubt.
Whatever.
But you know what I mean? Like, yes, there's been a million Terminator sequels, but if somebody watched Terminator Genesis and they were like, wait a minute, what is this? And they go and watch Terminator 1 and they're like, oh, this is amazing. Stop after Terminator 2 and you'll be good. Yeah. Like,
Well, and getting more into, like, touching on the examples that you highlighted, like Avatar and How to Train Your Dragon, like, we were kids when those came out, right? Like, they're coming out now. To have a super strong opinion about it as a 30-year-old, just because the thing that you liked as a kid is different, is like, I think that's a little extreme. Like, calm down, just let it exist for a little bit. If you don't like it, just don't like it. It's fine. Like, it's not like they're going back and they're like, all right, we're deleting all the other stuff that existed. The only thing that exists now is this new version of Avatar. You can't even have the old one now.
It's gone.
Like, Cowboy Bebop came out and I watched that, and, like, that's one of my favorite animes of all time. The live action was okay. Like, it wasn't the worst thing in the world. I think, and this is getting more into, like, where you were kind of going with, like, touching on, like, the complaints that people end up having about these things. Like, yeah, we're in an age of remakes and retakes, but we never haven't been. Going back to, like, everything is a remix. Like, it's not like this is anything new. Nobody should be surprised. But then also, like, having strong opinions about these things, like, you don't have to watch it. The thing that you loved still exists.
Yeah.
Someone's just getting a crack at or presented a different take on a thing that you did love, and this, to carry this into, like, where I thought we could go with this conversation, is, like, there are shifts in medium that become necessary over time. And during those shifts in medium, things change, right? Like, you have play to screen, right? Like so like a theatrical adaptation getting its screen adaptation, right? Les Miserables. Like people, and you know what's the theater community tends to be more generally supportive of that stuff.
That's funny.
Than other communities, but I think it's because they're just happy there's more theater, you know?
Yeah.
But like really, like we have, so we've got like film to Broadway or Broadway to film. We can go either way, right?
Wicked Part
you can
1.
You can go book to screen or screen to book. You can go graphic novel to movie, usually not the other way, but like, but most of the time, graphic novel to movie, you know, anime to live action, or vice versa, which is what I usually would prefer.
Yeah.
But, but and then like, but a big thing that a big one recently, I sat down to watch Cyrano, right? I love Cyrano de Bergerac, right? By Edmond Rostand, like one of my favorite epic poems of all time. It's a classic story. It's where a lot of the tropes for these classic stories come from. It's a guy who's ugly, but he has all the beautiful words in the world. And then there's a guy who's handsome. And so the guy who's ugly, who is in love with the main girl, who it's an old French story, so it's his cousin, but like he starts writing the poetry about how he feels for her, and he gives it to the handsome guy, and he gives her the poetry. She falls in love with the handsome guy, but she's not really falling in love with the handsome guy, she's falling in love with the words, you know, like,
yeah.
So there's all of these, like, and then it becomes a beautiful classic tragedy, and I don't think he ever gets with his cousin, like, officially. I don't think it's good. Actually, but yeah, but like, that was redone recently as a musical a la Hamilton style with Peter Dinklage in it. Oh. And it wasn't for me. Like, I love Cyrano de Bergerac. I love the classic Cyrano de Bergerac. I kind of enjoy Roxanne. I don't know if you've seen that. It's the Steve Martin retelling in the 80s. I have not. It's actually proper, like they nod to Cyrano de Bergerac in that he has a long nose, which is like that's the malformity of Cyrano de Bergerac, is he has this like long, like pickle, like almost needle nose style, right? Yeah, it's nuts. I big recommend, cannot recommend it enough. It's amazing. But it's retold in Roxanne. It's been retold a few different times with different shells on it, and then it got retold as like this weird like musical. I didn't like it that much, but like I said, some people might love that. And I feel like the people who love that, when they go back into Cyrano, might even enjoy that more or less. Who knows? Like maybe Peter Dinklage is the Cyrano for them. But I love that. And it's such a good property. And I'm glad it was made anyway. You know, and then like even now, and there's been some controversy around this, but I don't delve into comments, and I don't go looking for people's first reactions and first looks to things. Like, I'd rather watch something and then form my own opinion and then engage with any sort of discussion that's around it than have someone be like, well, it's gonna be bad, because that changes the way that you view it, right? So like in Shakespeare, one thing that's been really cool that's been happening a ton is just gender swapping and gender bending roles, which I love.
Yeah.
Like Hamlet at the Round Theater in England was done this past year, and Hamlet was played by a woman and the main female character was played by a man, and it was perfect. Like I can't tell, like, and there was another female lead character in it too who was originally male in the script, but they were just like people in the theater community now at this point, they're just like, we don't fucking care. Like, we're casting it how we want. And then there's a version of Midsummer Night's Dream, right? And I've told you about this before, where Titania and Oberyn, right? Like, they have their first interaction, and then somewhere, I don't know, I haven't pinpointed it, but somewhere their lines get swapped. So they didn't gender swap the characters, they swapped their lines. And in the original, Titania wakes up and falls in love with Bottom, who's like an actor from a local theater troupe, right? Instead, in this version, Oberyn wakes up and all of a sudden he's speaking Titania's lines, and he falls in love with Bottom. And it's like a nice switch on the story. And I, like, when I first was watching it, because I knew nothing going into it, which was so much better, I'm like, wait, this isn't right. I know this play. Like, this is weird. I don't know what's going on. And then I was like, oh my God, they swapped his lines. This is brilliant. I love it.
Interesting.
So,
interesting comparison with like theater, because you mentioned, now I don't know a lot about theater, and I don't watch a lot of theater, but you mentioned.
Me neither.
Yeah, okay. Now who's gaslighting?
Compared to my friends that I do theater with, I actively tell them I'm the worst theater kid because they'll make a reference. I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about.
You still know more than I do.
Educate me more. I know, yeah.
But you mentioned that they don't really care. They're just doing it how they want. They're casting how they want, and they're doing these adaptations. And I feel like it seems like you're kind of on the same side in the sense that like, as long as it's good, or as long as like even you just personally enjoy it, that's kind of what you're going for. And the comparison that I think of is Star Wars for me. Like,
hit it.
I love every Star Wars movie, and I genuinely do.
Great.
Like, I even think 7, 8, and 9 work. Like, I think that they're not as bad as people think, but I also know that when these conversations come up, I very much make it clear that, like, look, I get all of the criticisms. I understand why you fucking hate 7, 8, 9, or just Star Wars in general. And you're allowed to feel that way. But for me, I could put on episode 1, I could put on episode 9, I could put on a spinoff, I can put on one of the TV shows, I can read one of the books, I can play one of the games, and no matter what, my enjoyment gonna be through the roof because I just love it. And I think that's, again, I understand that there's bad parts of Star Wars. There are things that people don't like, but you mentioned gatekeeping earlier, and that's what made me think of it, is that there's a lot of people that, even fans of things, will be like, oh, no, you don't understand. Like, the reason why episode 9 doesn't work is because in episode 1 there was a line from Palpatine. And it's like, who fucking cares, dude? If somebody likes that movie, just let them like it. Which I know, like, obviously we still sit here and we talk shit about, like, things like Rebel Moon. But, hey, like, if you're a weirdo missing some brain cells and you like Rebel Moon...
We're not talking shit about Rebel Moon by comparing it to other things. We actually watched it and that was our reaction. Like, we're not talking shit about it. We're reacting to a thing that we saw.
And listen, if you like Rebel Moon...
Great for you.
We'll pray for you or something,
No,
like,
great for you. I hope you love it forever, and it's amazing. And if that's your style, good news. There's plenty of shit like that, or all over the place.
Yeah, right. So,
going into but I mean, to get a little more heady on it, I think a good. I don't know the quote, but I know what I want to say here. It's comparison is the death of originality, right? So like in these things that we've been highlighting and talking about, yes, there are original ideas. Making some of those characters different in Avatar, the live action, than they were in the cartoon. That's original, right? That's you looking at it saying this has to be different for whatever purpose, right? The creative person. That's the creative person looking at it saying this needs to be different for XYZ purpose. And as long as it's a meaningful shift that adds to the story, I think it's positive, right? Yeah. But once other people grab hold of it and start comparing it to a thing that they are biased toward, right? So now they're using fallibility of thought. They're using the fallacy of their own personal bias, right? So personal bias, that's fallacy, and they're comparing the two things. What it does is it closes the door on that type of originality, especially when that sort of opinion gets propagated when it goes viral. I think this is a proper term of goes viral, because what it does is it's an invasive thought that exists oftentimes before something even comes out from someone who oftentimes, and I'm just going to say oftentimes, is a gatekeeper, right? And what it does is it dilutes or pollutes even the consciousness surrounding something that might even just be good and original, might even just be okay, you know? Like, and when it comes to the Star Wars movies, Star Wars, like, there was actually, I remember as a kid, like, there was a breadth of, like, Star Wars encyclopedias of, like, beasts and different stormtroopers and droids and different ships that exist. And it was coming from people's imaginations. And, like, there were schematics and, anatomies and stuff like that. And then somewhere along the lines, Lucasfilm said, none of that is canon. Only stuff in the movies is canon. And that's what I think really started that big shift, because then all of a sudden you had people taking sides there. And I don't think that was the intention. So I don't really blame Lucasfilms for being like, whoa, we have to rein this in, right? We can't just give everybody like creative control over the Star Wars universe. Yeah. I get that. But at the same time, that's where that schism started. That's where like a lot of the gatekeeping and that still exists in Star Wars came from, right? Yeah. So really gatekeeping and comparison in my opinion, is what kills the originality that we could have with these things. I mean, even just look at Miles Morales. He's Spider-Man, but different. That's it. He's Spider-Man. He's still Spider-Man. They call him Spider-Man. He's just Miles Morales. He's the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man, and he's just different. And I actually happen to like that one more than I like Spider-Man now, you know?
Yeah.
But had I not given it a chance, had I just looked at it and been like, this is unnecessary and a remake, I never would have given myself the ability to enjoy this retelling of this story.
I totally agree. And like, yeah, I mean, that's kind of it though. I mean, you're right in the sense that, you know, you've said it a couple times that even an original idea isn't always going to be fully original. And
yeah,
I mean, you can change elements of a character. Like, and again, I kind of understand, like, maybe having Sokka be as sexist as he was in the cartoon, maybe 19 years later, that's not the way to go about it. Maybe he can have that character arc. And, you know, I've thought about this, and I'm not a writer by any stretch, but like maybe instead of him being openly, you know, like insulting and degrading towards the women around him, maybe he's just not open to their suggestions. And then somewhere along the lines, they suggest something and it works. And then it starts to click with him that, oh, like maybe I shouldn't discredit people. You know, I mean, like,
well, that might still be the case. Like, we're still days away from ever having even witnessed this thing. You know,
absolutely
so, like,
right.
I think to even hypothesize on a thing that we have not witnessed yet is like silly.
Yeah, exactly. And
but you know, like to wrap up the main conversation that we're having, like everything's a remix. Like, if you're going to compare them, right? Like, if you look at the component pieces of anything else, like if you look at a song simply for the sample that it used, like you're not going to get as much out of it as if you actually just try to take in the song, process it, listen to it, find the meaning and like the things that you enjoy about it, right? Same thing with a movie, same thing with a comic, because let's be real, how many original comics have there been in the past 20 years? Not many. Not many.
Even the ones that people are like, oh, but the boys is original. Without the Justice League, I said without the Justice League, the boys wouldn't exist. And you know, one point that I want to make, because I think that this, I said, and I stand by, The Creator, the movie, is one of my favorite movies of last year. And again, I understand that it's not for everybody, but even that movie, which is
specifically me, Odie.
Specifically,
you coming at me right now, Odie?
Coming at you right now. But I put them up, Kevin.
Look, the physics don't make sense. All right.
No, but like I look at that movie because I recently rewatched it again, and you know, it's an original idea, right? But there are elements of Terminator, there are elements of Elysium, there are elements of Star Wars, there are elements of Chappie, there
District
are
9.
Elements of District 9, there are elements of so many different movies. And not saying that it's copying them in a blatant sense of like Rebel Moon, which is my favorite comparison now, but like those ideas that the creator did clearly were inspired, and you know, it's almost like a homage. And I don't really mind that kind of stuff because, like, I think about the movie. Have you seen the movie Us from Jordan Peele?
Yeah, of course.
So when they're on the boardwalk, you know, you can tell when a filmmaker really loves movies because, again, you know, Gareth Edwards with The Creator, obviously all those like little hints of other things. But Jordan Peele in the movie Us, there's a deep cut reference where they're on the boardwalk in the beginning of the movie. And I forget the character's name, but the wife of the main character, the main family, the woman, the wife, I can't remember her name.
The main character.
Yeah, the main character. She's walking on the boardwalk and she looks back at the carousel and she makes a comment about them filming a movie that was pretty crazy at the carousel. The movie she is talking about is the movie The Lost Boys from Joel Schumacher from 1987, where, yes, most of it was filmed on a Warner Brothers soundstage, but the parts that were acting as the fake California town were filmed in that same location that Jordan Peele was filming Us. And so he put a line about The Lost Boys in Us that if you didn't know The Lost Boys was filmed in that location and stuff, like, you wouldn't know that, but Jordan Peele did. And I think that is where, and I know this doesn't really tie into the remakes and retakes and stuff, but like, I love that there is so much content out there, whether it be a remake or original or whatever, that there are filmmakers out there, and they're my favorite filmmakers, that put homages and references and little lines that go to other works of art that inspired them, because The Lost Boys is something that Jordan Peele has quoted before. Like, without these things before, whether they're original or not, we wouldn't have the things we have now. And I just think that is just, I don't know, I love those little, like, pieces of
and think about how many double and triple entendres that we get like lyrically in music that are just their homages to the things that influence those artists, right? Like that's how that works. I mean, gent, the style of gent, even just the name of the genre, the metal genre gent, comes from the sound made by the guitars of Meshuggah. Like, that's where that comes from. And, you know, you're referencing Jordan Peele, but also, like, Wes Anderson. Lots of homages in Wes Anderson films, right? Yeah. You know, Christopher Nolan, good homages to things that influenced him. Even James Gunn, like, the whole entire soundtrack to Guardians of the Galaxy is an homage to music he loved. You know, everything is really properly a remix, and it's only when we judge and compare and mire ourselves in our own biases that we ruin any amount of originality that they could have had, right? So really, whether or not it's objectively good is up to the person who's making it, right? So, like, ultimately, things can be objectively good and bad based on the elements that we know to be good and bad. We can actually say that. That's not just an opinion. Like, it's something that can be registered on a scale. But beyond that, there's the subjective good, right? And you and I have talked about this a lot. And so when it comes to remakes and retakes, like there's the review that I either come away with is it was good overall. Like, not only was it like original and I appreciated like what was done with it, the adaptation or whatever it is, or the medium shift, whatever it is, right? It's either it was all good and I really enjoyed it, or like even great, right?
Yeah.
Or it was objectively good but not necessarily fun or anything original, like, you know, or it was fun but not necessarily objectively good, like, you know, like, and that happens too. And then there's the worst version, which is just it was neither of those. But that is completely subjective, right? So on that scale, you go from objective to subjective, and for every single person, you kind of have to combine the objectivity of what you, and objectivity is affected by subjectivity, yes, okay, but like you have to combine the relative objective scale that you use to assess any form of medium that you're taking in with your own personal subjective scale in order to properly weigh something out. And going back to where we were talking before, like, that can be tainted if you consume someone else's subjective opinions before you go into it, you know? And now, those can be useful a la critics reviews if you're unsure about what movie you want to see and you don't want to waste money this weekend, you know, like that. There's arguments to be made for that, but ultimately I would say one of the best things that you can do, and something that I've continued to do, is go in relatively blind on things, you know, like Rings of Power. I did not do my research on, right? I know a lot of the Lord of the Rings universe. I went into Rings of Power blind, and because I wasn't consuming all of the hate that people had for this female lead right off the rip, I was able to go through it and go, oh, you know what? Actually, I'm enjoying a lot of this. I see the like, as the weeks went on, I was like, okay, I see the criticism people have, but I'm actually enjoying this show overall, right? I have since gone back and watched the first couple episodes, and it was relatively painful. And I was like, oh, these first couple episodes are bad. The first time I watched them, they were good. The second time I watched them, I was like, oh, this wasn't as good as the first time, which is fine. That just means it's not holding up. That's a completely different scale.
Yeah.
But I sent you the picture. I'm pumped for season two. I don't care that we're telling Sauron's backstory. I don't care. Like, I'm not a Lord of the Ring fan who's going to be like, you can't do that. Like, no, fuck off. Like, he barely has a backstory.
Yeah.
His backstory is like base level descriptive myth in the Silmarillion, which is like the nerdiest of Lord of the Rings tomes, right? It's like the Bible for Lord of the Rings. So like, and his backstory is not even that long.
And so you don't know a lot about him, even in the movies.
Yeah, so I think it's cool to get into that realm and like to experiment with that and to see different takes on things. And you know, I'm like, when Avatar: The Last Airbender comes out, I'm sure I'll find some time in my schedule to watch the first episode. You know, like and going back to, I think I said this before we even started recording. I got my book for Into the Woods this week.
Oh, yeah.
And the producer told me, hey, this is going to be different than any other book that you might have already seen or had, or like a PDF if you downloaded it. Like, we have PDFs available for you of this version. There's different songs that we have options to do toward the end of it. There's a little bit of different dialogue, like some things have been shifted, and that's good. That's necessary. Like, I don't want to do the 1980 whatever version of Into the Woods. Like, I don't want to do that. I want to do our version. And that's what you are doing every single time an actor plays a different role. And I think that's why I brought up theater and why it's actually hyper relevant in theater, is because, I mean, even just recently, you had Josh Groban swap out for Aaron Tveit in Sweeney Todd. Those are two different Sweeney Todds. They're happening within the same year. Like, it's not even like they're shutting down the production and then bringing it back with Aaron Tveit. It's like, hey, no, we're just swapping Sweeneys for you guys. Like, it's going to be a different experience. But like, they do that happens on Broadway. The original cast of Hadestown, like, a lot of them have moved on and started doing other things, and now new people are coming in and they're getting their chance to bring a little bit of life to Hadestown. And so in that, what's kind of interesting in theater is everybody has their favorite version of different characters, like so many of the theater people that I'm now spending more time with, they're sharing with me their favorites. And I think it's super cool because they all highlight something different about these characters. They all highlight something new or creative or original, even though it's the same fucking story. And I think we culturally on a grander scale could maybe take notes from that and be like, all right, cool, well, let's watch it, let's see, what's the worst, like the worst thing, maybe it's okay, and if it's bad, it's bad, and we just go, oh yeah, that sucked, bummer. I mean, there's nothing to be enraged about.
Totally. I mean, that is exactly why every once in a while I do this. I'm gonna go see every movie that's a big release, regardless if it's something I want to see or would see, because I'm being a little bit more careful with TV shows, but TV shows are a big commitment. 8 1-hour episodes, that's a big commitment. But, 2-3 hours to go to the movies. I have discovered some movies that way that, like, I never would have given the time of day if I hadn't just been like, well, I guess I'm going to watch this. And then I go in and I'm like, oh, I had zero expectations and this movie was actually pretty good or pretty fun. And I think that's an important part, is just, I don't know. I mean, it's easy for me to sit here and say it because, like, I love movies and content like that so much that I watched The Beekeeper and was giddy in my seat having a great time, like,
of course,
I
would probably be like crawling in my skin watching that. It's fine.
Yeah. Like, you love the Fast and the Furious. So, I mean, because you know everything about that franchise.
Yeah, for sure. You know what? I'm going in with no expectations as to what your jam is this week. What's your jam?
That's a good segue. That's a good segue, Kevin. That is a good segue.
Thank you.
So, in the spirit of remakes and retakes, I watched an old classic,
Star Wars,
from 2008.
Star Wars.
No, there was no movie. There's no Star Wars in 2008. There was no movie of Star Wars in 2008. You're wrong.
So you made one.
Yeah, I made one. Actually, no, you
made a Star Wars.
You're literally guessing, like, so adjacent to this movie. Have you seen Be Kind Rewind with Jack Black and Mos Def?
Yes.
So that movie, for those of you that don't know, Jack Black and Mos Def run a video store like Blockbuster. It's 2008, so it's VHSs. But because Jack Black's character is like a conspiracy nut job, pretty much. He's paranoid. He wears tinfoil, and he ends up erasing all of the VHS tapes. So him and Mos Def decide that instead of just, like, they can't find replacement tapes, so they're just gonna recreate these movies.
Bootleg.
Yeah, they just recreate them, like 20-minute versions, and it ends up being a huge hit. And they recreate movies like Ghostbusters and RoboCop and Boys in the Hood and, like, a lot of classic movies. Or I guess it'd be considered.
That movie's hilarious.
It's, if you love movies and you love homages, as we've been talking about. I watched this movie specifically last night in preparation for this episode because I remember really liking it at the time, and I've only seen it once. And I watched it now for the second time, and I love this movie. It is such a good time. It's on HBO Max. It's a breeze. It's got a really good story, and I really like the way it's done. It's very comical in like the 2008 sense, and it's just it's a good way to, like, do remakes and retakes and also make them homages. And, like, I firmly believe that if I'd owned a video store in the mid 2000s and a video camera, I probably would have attempted something like this if I was in my 20s.
Nice.
So it's great.
In preparation for this episode, I too did a little research. I rewatched the worst remake ever, Rebel Moon, baby. No,
oh God.
Actually, so my jam this week, unintentional, but relevant. A bunch of people, and I've been seeing it at the bookstore for like years now. But a bunch of people recently who are friends of mine from like Magic the Gathering and like some lady friends of mine, they all have recommended Sarah J. Maas's series, the Court of Thorn and Roses. Which goes up through like a court of like, I don't know, silver and flame and whatever, ash and something. Like they all have like 2 elements. They're all courts. It's all about fairies and it's very mystical. But it's a good series and she does amazing world building. Once again, super influenced, right? So everything's a remix. This is like, as I'm listening to this, I'm like, oh yeah, I know this fairy lore. Like this is all fae lore. Like it's cool. And fae lore is something that's really interesting as it's been developed from like pagan days in, I want to say even like the 1500s up through now. And so we've actually, even here in this country, we've culturally added lore to it that is now like kind of canonized within the greater accepted mythology of fae. But it's cool to hear all those elements coming together. But a really interesting thing happened with it. I'm going through like the first 5 chapters of the audiobook. I'm not going to spoil a lot because I think people actually really should listen to these. So it's called, a lot of people abbreviate the series by calling it ACOTAR, right? A Court of Thorn and Roses, right? Court of Thorns and Roses, ACOTAR. So I'm listening to the first ACOTAR book, and I'm going through the first 5 chapters, and a lot of the elements in my mind, I'm just like, this is Beauty and the Beast. Like this is what's happening right now. This is the plot of this. It doesn't give too much away, but like her dad has like a physical ailment. She's fending for her family and is the main character's relatively like regarded as being weird and an outcast, and her family's not really well looked upon. And then because of something she does, she has to, like, this guy comes and he's a magical fae and he's like, you have to come live with me forever because that's the rules. Also, I'm cursed. And I was like, oh, cool. This is just, my friend checked in on me, my friend James. And James was like, oh, hey, what do you think of the book? And I was like, well, it's the most eloquent and fantastical version of a Stockholm Syndrome story I've ever listened to. First off, I go second, and James was like, oh, it's interesting that you picked up on that. I'm like, what do you mean it's interesting I picked up on that? It's literally Beauty and the Beast. Like, it's the elements of Beauty and the Beast, even down to, like, there's a wolf in the beginning that's relatively pivotal to the story. I'm like, that's in Beauty and the Beast. But had I just judged it on its face for the elements that were similar to a story I had already read, I would not be up to chapter 39 now, where, like, it gets dark and crazy in ways I did not expect. And I was like, I'm up on chapter 39, and like it's adult. Like, the main character gets, like, beat up pretty bad. Like, I'm like, wow, this is not where I thought this was going. But, like, there's some the other thing that's funny is everybody who's recommended it to me is like, you'll love the world building, and I do. And they were like, also, we should warn you, it gets a little smutty, and it does. and I normally I'm not, I don't know if you know this about me, Odie, I'm not a paperback romance reader, but now I can say that I've dabbled.
Interesting.
And it's not a paperback romance by any means. It's an epic adventure. It's really cool, and I do love every bit of world building. I'm very interested in the characters. I am getting invested in them. But some of it I'm like, oh, this is a CW show. They're going to dry hump in a couple pages, you know? Like, I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, cool. This is very Twilight of them.
So I'll just wait for this to come out as like a Netflix original movie or TV show.
I think it's in the works of being adapted right now.
Of course. I wouldn't be surprised.
But actually, you know, if you get the time, I would recommend reading it. It's very well written. Sarah J. Maas actually does this really cool thing. There's a character in the book who swears a lot, and instead of having the words there that the character's using for swear words, she just says that he swore as he's doing something. So like he swore as he unsheathed his sword, and I'm like, ha, it's any word I want it to be. At first I was like, what did he say? But like a few chapters in, I'm like, I'm gonna imagine what he's saying. Like,
Given the
so in my
reader
mind,
little...
this guy's just running around going, fuck, shit. Like
a little reader imagination. I like when authors do that, when they leave a little something ambiguous so you can kind of fill it in.
Yeah, she did a really good job. At one point, one of the characters is setting another character's broken nose, and she did a really good job describing that. And that to me is nothing but prose. There's nothing poetic about that. It's a thing that needs to happen in order for someone to be better. And like she did a very good job not overly poeticizing it and making it short and sweet, describing it, and then also like kind of like wrapping that whole scene up really quick. And that's, to me, that's early signs of someone who's gonna, like, I feel like as these books go on, the writing's only gonna get better or like more rich, or at least I have that inclination to believe that way, because that was, even just something that simple was that well done,
Yeah.
So that's my jam. It's a book.
Ugh. Sorry, I'm not surprised.
Tired. Wow. We have remaked and retaked ourselves into a tired state.
No, I just, man, it's been a week and it's been a morning already.
Yes, it has.
But no, I love the jam.
But that's it.
Yeah, that's pretty much.
That's the end of the podcast.
That's all my thoughts.
That's where we're at. What movie would you retake, and why would you cast Danny DeVito in it? And what movie or what character would he play?
Okay. I would. Can I give you two?
Yeah.
Okay. First one would be first Iron Man, have Danny DeVito be Iron Man.
Yeah.
I think that'd be great. But make the suit like skin tight, not CGI, like a skin tight spandex.
Just spandex.
And
he's not actually even Iron Man.
Yeah,
he's just spandex.
And then like poorly like CGI green screen it, and like just let Danny DeVito be Danny DeVito. No helmet, always his head. Just 100%. I want him in that. And then the other one, I would remake the Avatar movies with the blue people, and I would have Danny DeVito play Sam Worthington's main Avatar character.
Perfect.
Yeah,
I love that. My favorite retake prompts ever, and it's a little memeified at this point, but I love when people suggest remaking a movie and keeping only one character and having the rest of the characters be Muppets.
Oh my god.
like Dune and Timothy Chalamet is the only character you keep, everyone else is a Muppet.
I would do oh my god. I would do,
or like
yeah,
Lord of the Rings, and the only character you keep is Gandalf and everyone else is a Muppet.
See, my mind immediately went to Fast and Furious, but make the cars Muppets too. So that way it's just Vin Diesel, and anytime there's a car chase, it's just like two cars on sticks going like up and down but not moving. Like the background's moving, but the cars are just like going up and down, like old puppet shows.
You know what I would love about that is Muppets often have a lot of banter, so the cars would banter with each other.
Yeah, the cars would be sentient.
Like, could you imagine like a Fozzie Bear Honda Civic just like like a Kermit the Frog Miata, like just
the tagline
ripping.
I ain't got friends, I got felt. Boom.
Perfect.
Love it.
Ba, 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 ba. I love that we ended up Fast and the Furious 2 weeks in a row.
Woohoo!
Unintentional. All right.
My head. I'm pretty sure.
Are you recording now?
Yes, I'm recording.
I'm glad you're recording now. You did an entire report about Fast and Furious. Look,
off
you
the
said
top
you
of my head. So I can do this off the top of my head.
Look, no, you can't.
Yes, I can.
This is more varying and different than Fast and the Furious. This is.
I can do it off the top of my head.
No, you can't.
Yep, I can.
All right, well, fine, you can.